So I was doing this essay about Jordan and the 2017 Open, and as I was writing it, it was just very clear to me that you were the one that we needed to talk to about all of this. Just because I was doing research, it was, and admittedly not great research, let's be honest, but I was trying to find the origin of the Spieth Island gag on Twitter. And I tracked it. The furthest I could track it back was you in like 2020 made an oblique reference to it. But I said in the thing when I read, it was like, I'm sure it goes back further than that. Is that true?
I'm sure it does. Yeah, it's hard to, scholars I'm sure have lost the exact origin.
Yeah, it's true.
I know for me, it goes all the way back to like 2009, 2010, I think.
Whoa.
Just from a, maybe not the Spieth Island bit specifically, but as far as like my relationship as a Jordan fan. And, a place that both of us kind of cut our teeth at, Golf Week magazine. I did a lot of... I did a lot of junior golf coverage. It was like my first real job. It was really like an internship and then kind of turned into a job. But one of the first things you do at a place like Golf Week is you get really, really in-depth into covering junior and amateur and college golf. That's what they have done such a good job of for so long. And so to me, when I was like still in college, really, like the rock stars were, these like 13, 14, 15-year-old kids that I had like heard legends about from Sean Martin and from Eric Soderstrom and from all these these people that were older than me working at Golf Week. And it was, by the time I was an intern, it was like, this kid Jordan Spieth in Plano, Texas is the dude. Like he's the guy. He's going to make $1 billion. He is the next coming of, elite golfers. And so I just remember like meeting him for the first time at the Junior Players in like 2009 or something, 2010. I think he was probably 15 or 16 years old. And it was just really funny how even at that time, I mean, he was a tour player, right? Like he was really like so in control of his emotions, the way he carried himself, the way he looked at reporters, which was like basically me and like Gary Smits from the Florida Times Union.
Shout out Gary.
It was just it was really, really clear that like, oh my God, this guy's on the path for superstardom. As you know, like sometimes those don't pan out and sometimes they do. And when they do, it's really, really fun to just be on the ride the whole time. And so I think like, getting to know, I don't know about know him, but like getting to, kind of meet him and follow his career from that early age and then going through, the John Deere Classic and the whole bunker shot and then going through the 2015 season when he, legitimately like I don't think people realize how close he was to legit winning the Grand Slam. Yeah. And just following it, the ups, downs, him losing his game, him trying to put his game back together. Yeah. I mean, it just attracts a certain kind of fan, that I think me and Solly and Kyle Porter and, KVV and a lot of people have just had a lot of fun with over the years.
Yeah. I mean, the funny thing about him is that can all happen in a tournament too. Like his whole game can be summed up sometimes in just his whole career can be summed up in 4 rounds sometimes where it's a nightmare and you're on the roller coaster and the highs and the lows are outrageous.
I was doing a pod with Shane Bacon recently and we were talking about Pebble Beach and like the most iconic shots hit there. And both of us, I think, kind of forgot about Jordan's shot on the 8th hole a couple years ago. And it's just truly like one of those things. It's like, man, what's another sport where, the athlete is putting themselves in mortal danger? I mean, that was like Ja Morant, like he's putting his life on the line in order to, hit this free throw that's going to keep him, 2 points back or whatever. But like, that's kind of what you get with Jordan. I don't know of any other player that kind of shit happens to.
Yeah. So where were you in 2017 then? So this whole essay that is Jordan's at Birkdale 2017, and I'm at a bachelor party in Chicago, and I am I've sort of make this silly comparison between the two of us, but where were you? Where were you in 2017 in July?
Yeah, I was at home. I remember I was winding down my tenure with the PGA Tour. That was like one of my last events, probably working at the tour. I think I left in August of 2017. So watching that was kind of, I was at home, and I think it kind of, just sparked like it's kind of everything I love about pro golf, right? It's having a good guy to root for. It's having a villain who's not really a villain, right? In
Right.
Kuchar, and somebody that's
Of course.
has objectively just never done anything to really, make me dislike him. But through a
Right.
golf context, you got to kind of, play the hand that you're dealt and make your own villains. And so it was kind of in my head, a very easy good versus evil situation. And, Jordan, it was like a little mini microcosm, I guess, of kind of what was to come, and who knows if he'll, reach those heights again. But coming off of 2015, it was like, the Tiger comps, like, all right, everybody slow down with the Tiger comps. This is ridiculous.
They called him the Golden Child.
And then
Like,
he
that
won the
was literally his nickname.
Masters. And then he won the Masters, and it was like, okay, well, maybe like 1 or 2 comps, but like that's all I'm going to allow you. And then he wins the U.S. Open. And it's like, okay, maybe these aren't so absurd. And then, just kind of, I think you expect him to win every time he tees up, after that. And so going through 16 without a major, going through most of 17 without a major, it was like, all right, our guy's back. Let's capture just a little bit of that magic that we had in 15, which was such an unbelievable, fun year, at the majors. And but yeah, that's a very long-winded answer too. I was sitting at my couch, sitting on my couch at home in Jacksonville, watching and just living and dying with every shot.
Yeah, well, he was supposed to be the Golden Child, and then he, on the back 9 at Augusta in 16, it's like, oh, okay, well, now like the crown, like this is a coronation more than anything else. And then 12 happens, and he goes in the water twice, and it's this whole thing. And I think he really became, for obviously you had a different relationship with him, but for a lot of people, he became like actually more relatable at that point.
I think so. It's like the perfect kind of sports relatable, right? Where it's like there's nothing actually relatable other than, oh yeah, I have ups and downs too, right? Like, that's crazy.
Like I've had some trouble in my life.
Yeah, I also struggle with my putting occasionally, and
I've hit a ball in the water before.
Yeah, it's almost like when people say like the LPGA is relatable, right? It's like, well, yeah, you guys hit at the same distances, but it's not actually relatable.
Right, it's not even close.
But it's more relatable than it is watching Rory McIlroy or watching John Rahm or Scotty Scheffler or Tiger. And I think that's what people latched onto. And I think Solly does a good job on our podcast of flagging this very, very often. But like, I also just don't think people necessarily give enough credit to like the age, right? And just how young he was when he went out and won the John Deere Classic, and when he qualified for the President's Cup team, and when he qualified for the Ryder Cup team, and he did all these things that, he's like 20, 21, 22 years old, whereas now, we have guys that come out and they might win on tour, and that's amazing. They might come out and win at 23, or Tom Kim is kind of the only thing that's really been close. But it's just to do it at that age and to do like literal Tiger things at that age. And I think another part of it too is, I don't know how sociological you want to get here, but I think also just from like a Twitter social media perspective, like I think there's almost like this formative land grab period, right? Where like people are kind of like planting their flag at a certain time where it's like, you've got Rory. Like Rory's kind of almost the same thing, right? I mean, Rory's an absolute generational talent, but the reason that I think we all live and die with him so much is because we kind of planted our flag at this very like formative time. And I'm sure every generation's like that, but I think with Jordan specifically, it's like you get into that 2013, 2014, 2015 time, right? As like golf Twitter is taking off. And I mean, he's kind of just the guy. And so that's where it's, it's always funny to hear our mutual friend Andy Johnson kind of go off about like, I don't know why everybody likes this guy. He's just another guy. Who cares? And like, he's largely right, on a lot of that from like a statistical, like empirical basis, but like, fuck off, man, with a lot of the other stuff. Like that's, it's not even close. Go to the local golf course and ask someone like, hey, Denny McCarthy or Jordan Spieth, who's having a better season? And like, just go take the temperature out there a little bit. And I think a lot of that goes back to just that 2015 season and the way he burst onto the scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think superstars like that, and Rory falls into that too, because, he had his mess at Augusta and then he turned around and wins the Open. But like, there's that you're right. It's not actually relatable, but you do feel closer to that person when it happens. So like Tiger's a god. Like you can't really like the stuff that he's just it's too different and too far up in the stratosphere. But like those guys, yeah, it's like, oh well, hey Jordan, like I'm also losing my hair a little bit. This guy's me. This is gonna be great. And and it also is good, like you said too, like the manufacturing of, all right, well, this is the person I like, and you're kind of manufacturing. You pick the parts of them that you relate to and like. And now I hate Matt Kuchar all of a sudden.
Exactly. It's a lot of like, listen, I'm a Chicago White Sox fan just because that happened to be how I was brought up. Would I pick them now? No, of course not. But like, right. Listen, I got no other choice, man. They're
right. Yeah,
they're kind of my squad. Yeah. And I don't know, man. It's just I think some of the relatability stuff is funny too, because I think what's this kind of like perfect storm with Jordan is like, I truly, earnestly, positively believe like none of it's performative, right? Which I think is where you get into some of the other players, and it's kind of like, I think maybe you see what you're doing here, and you're trying to have like a social media moment, or you're trying to, whatever. But I think you spend any time with Jordan, and you listen to him talk, kind of off microphone and off camera, and like it's just kind of how he is, man. He's just kind of he's a very earnest guy. He's very full of like curiosity. And, I think the way he talks to Greller kind of seems like the way he is, when nobody's watching too. And I think that's what makes it so, again, I keep coming back to that word relatable, but like, I think it's more like it's reality more than it is like, relatable.
It's the word that I think there's a backlash to it now, but there's an authenticity to it.
Yeah.
A little bit, where like the go get that moment was like, it was sort of, if you look at it in a vacuum, it's sort of awkward, right? It's like sort of like weird and awkward, but it's also badass. And it like, you could never manufacture that. It just feels like it was just off the cuff and it happened and he was fired up and off we go.
Shout out to JT. I think JT's kind of been trying to manufacture a couple of those moments. Yeah. They just don't come off as the same way.
Right. It's true. That's true. So what the thing that I ended up, going through this process with this was like, yeah, he's still pretty young. And so like, is there another evolution of him that, I mean, not that we can predict any of this stuff, but you know what I mean? Like, we go from the golden child in 2015, we hit the skids or the water in 2016. And now, he wins again, but now, he hasn't won in a long time, a major in a long time. So what do you think could be coming next for someone like him?
It's interesting. I think what's so cool about his game is, I don't know the right way to say this. Like, I think you watch someone like Rory is probably the best example of like a lopsided skill, right? Where you watch Rory and you're like, you can watch him play 2 holes and you're like, oh, okay, that guy is the best driver of the golf ball in the world. Yeah. Driving the golf ball, travels everywhere. And, obviously Rory hits it well and he occasionally putts it well. And, his wedges are what they are. But it's kind of like, okay, that driver for Rory is going to be there all the time, which means like he's probably going to contend forever. And I think what's cool about Jordan is you've had all these ebbs and flows where it's like 2013, oh my God, that's the guy that makes all the putts, right? Yeah. And he makes these inordinate amount of 20 footers, and he makes this crazy amount of, he's doing the looking at the whole thing on close putts, and he's doing that for a while. And then you get to 17, and it's like, oh my God, that's the best iron player in the world. Holy shit. Right. Like that guy is unbelievable. And he's putting up these like historic strokes gained tee to green numbers, or like strokes gained approach rather. And then I think as the golf swing has changed and as he's gone through injuries, I think that's a whole other underreported thing is like how injuries affect the golf swing, and him kind of masking a wrist injury for a really long time and trying to kind of get through that and rebuilding his golf swing, yada yada yada. I think now you've got this player that like I don't think he really jumps off the page anywhere. It's just like, God, this is so like punchable sports talk radio talk, but I mean he just kind of has like the thing, right? And he just like gets the ball in the hole occasionally, and a lot of times he doesn't. A lot of times he just blows up on the launch pad because none of these things are there to almost like fake it on bad weeks. But I think all of that's a long way, I think, of saying like he's this guy that just seems like he figures out how to make it work, with mixed results, and he hasn't made it work in quite a while. And I'm certainly aware of that, not giving him a pass on any of those things. But like, do I think that's going to last forever? I don't. Like, I still think he's like, one of maybe the best like capital G golfers in the world. Sure. He's kind of one of those guys. It's like, I think if you rolled out like, hey, we're all playing with hickory equipment today, he'd be like, yeah, great. I'll figure out how to just get in the hole.
And I'll bet on Jordan then.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, is that going to translate into 15 majors? Like, no, probably not. But
even one more would be a gift, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one more is like, that's a lot more than many people win. Right. And I think having him get to 4 and, push the ball forward down the field would just be, I mean, that'd be one of those moments that kind of like breaks the sport a little bit.
There'd be a lot of Mai Tais on Spieth Island.
There would be. Quite a bit.